All right, it's your favorite Path of Exile 2 creator back with another video. This is a follow-up to the kind of now infamous video I made about the initial impression of Path of Exile 2's Endgame. This is when you start mapping, and I had kind of just started out, found out what it was, played it a bit, and kind of wondered if it ever got improved from there. And concluded that it kind of didn't, so I said I was going to stop until they made some major changes. 24 hours later, they did, in fact, make some major changes, which included things like getting rid of resistance penalties and a few other things that seem kind of destined to one-shot you in these maps where you only are able to be killed once. So I went back and I put the time in. I've put at least a couple dozen hours into the endgame now. I know there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people more strong than me, but I'm running tier 15 Waystone nodes. I do a lot of damage on my ranger. I feel like I'm pretty strong at this point. Obviously you can always push and push and push to get higher and higher gear. But I've kind of entered this weird dichotomy where most of gameplay is very easy 95% of the time, and yes, of course I am acknowledging that ranger is at range is easier than most, but it's a real dichotomy of essentially I don't die at all a huge majority of the time, outside of a few rare circumstances where often I don't really feel like I even have a chance. So it's either it's very binary now, where it's like a cakewalk and I can just clear these maps with ease, or you run into something like, one of these activities where you activate a shrine or a purple hand from the ground, and they just hammer you with enemies. They just spawn them right on top of you in this frantic setting, and then suddenly being a ranged character is not so great. And they can box you in, and even if you're normally pretty evasive or whatever, or tanky even, you can get just mobbed and instantly killed, depending on what actually spawns. They can spawn, 6 affix rare enemies that just instantly burst you down before you can even read what they do. Other instances for me personally, any modifier where it gives enemies more accuracy, I pretty much just instantly die to any ranged enemy because my whole thing is avoiding being hit. And then what may be the most frustrating thing that I've encountered are bosses. Most map bosses are not terrible. A lot of them are just campaign bosses with relatively few mechanics. But then I went to a citadel. You go through an entire map, a tier 15 map. You reach the end boss, and surprise, it's one of the end of act bosses where they have many, many, many movesets. And even if you did, manage to beat them then, beating them now on a map that usually will have a ton of modifiers, and usually if one, wrong move will get you killed, that is not very fun. So it is this weird dichotomy between things that are pretty easy and then things that are still odd and feel unfair. It's this one portal idea, which past games did not have, that is so punishing in a way where, okay, you die, you start the map over, you die, you lose your Waystone, which turns out to be very important, and then you die and you lose XP. Does not feel great to lose XP. I'm at the point now where you have to really, really spec into maps giving you any amount of meaningful XP, but then you lose 10 or 15% on any death. So I kept running into situations where I'm like, okay, well, I want to do this challenging map, but if I make one wrong move, I die. So I'm going to grind 8 other maps to get the XP I need to actually tick over to the next level, and then I'll try something challenging. And I've kind of capped out around level 88 now because it's just crawling in terms of XP now. And again, if I try anything pushing past, a non-insane map, I'm going to probably die at least once, whether it's to a random boss or a random modifier on a rare, so I don't even bother. Related to this, Waystone management has never felt very good. You have these constant quests where it's complete 10, 5, 6 versions of tier whatever and higher, and then eventually, you're really only supposed to be running tier 15s or above. I think there's a tier 16. Again, I'm not at the crazy end of this, but 15 is very high and what a lot of people are running frequently. And it's not very fun to juggle these Waystones. It's not just because if you die, you lose the Waystone, which is whatever, not ideal, but if you don't find a Waystone of that level as you're running, you know, these maps, then you're just behind. And slowly, if that never pans out, even like I have every Atlas upgrade that you can to like try and upgrade Waystones, and I still just, I would have these ebbs and flows of like right at the beginning, it was so hard to kind of manage these early Waystones and have enough of them, especially when you're you know, a little weaker and dealing with one-shot deaths. Now at tier 15, I'm finding myself running out of them again because I keep running tier 15 maps, and like one of every 2, one of every 3, I'm getting a tier 15 drop. So like even in ones that are like 260% increased Waystones or whatever, it's like, yeah, I might find some Waystones, but like finding a level 7, a level 10, a level 12 Waystone is not really, like, all of those Waystones become almost irrelevant unless you're using them to traverse like garbage spaces. So I have not really enjoyed that aspect of it. I don't want this to sound all negative. I guess I'll take a break to say I really do love kind of the core of the mapping idea. I really think it's cool to have this giant spread out map, and kind of import modifiers onto these different maps and play little mini games and try to find, you know, citadels, even though I know that can be frustrating for some people, and expanding outward, capturing towers. They don't, the tower level themselves is trash, but I really like the end game. I've really enjoyed increasing my build and making myself stronger. I feel like I made a ton of progress on that, to the point where, you know, I am not dealing with the one portal death thing nearly as much. So when it does happen, it's extra annoying. But I really enjoyed, you know, really beefing up my ranger in a way that makes me feel like all, you know, the 100 hours I put into it are worth it, even if, you know, I'm not going to be a top player in the world. As for where things go from here, there are some problems with the reward system right now, which I think is a fairly common thought, where essentially if you're doing anything but like maxing magic find gear, you're just farming very inefficiently, because magic find affects everything from like the quality of loot you find, like actual items, but then also like how many orbs you get that are, you know, super important for managing gear, and, you know, gambling and upgrading and stuff. And eventually it just sort of turns into like, are you gonna, you know, do you find a remotely okay base thing? Are you gonna brick it by rolling it too many times? And like sometimes you don't, and it's amazing and it's a great feeling. And then sometimes you just trash something. It's just, the whole process is sort of hindered by how important magic find is, in a way that, you know, it reminds me of Diablo 2, because this is the exact same happened back then. I've heard PoE 1 has a system that is a lot better than this, but what the current system is now is not great, even though, like, I have had a fun time farming, but knowing I could have, you know, if I just fully spec'd into magic find and farmed all the gear for magic find, I would be getting, you know, multiples and multiples more stuff. That doesn't feel like a very good system. And then trading, I'm ignoring trading. I'm doing all self-found. I'm not, I guess, anti-trading. I did a ton of trading in the Diablo 2 days, but I'm sort of just over that, because I feel like once you flip that switch and you're just buying items for exalts and stuff, like it becomes a totally different type of game there. Not that it's, you know, quote unquote cheating or whatever, like it's a core part of the game, but that's just not something I really have an interest in anymore. But if you don't have an interest in that, the stuff you'll find, you know, the great stuff you'd find on the market relatively easily may be kind of practically impossible to drop. So I guess I certainly have some different thoughts than I did initially, but some things that I thought would end up being annoying. One death per map, kind of cheap ways to die, losing Waystones, having trouble juggling Waystones, losing XP. All of those together feel kind of punishing. And I'm not asking for like no penalties on death or anything, but I think when you stack all of those on top of each other, it doesn't feel great. But I'm in this bizarre situation where pretty much if I have just a map of rares, or, you know, maybe a normal boss with no insane like insta kill modifiers like accuracy on me, I'm going to clear it relatively easily. But then you run into, you know, doing a whole dungeon to fight a pinnacle boss and getting stomped on once, and that whole dungeon and your Waystone is erased. Like it's a very weird split right now. And again, all of this is just feedback for early access. I understand fully that this is not fully baked at all, but kind of the point of this period is to give feedback like this, and I will say I should have come at the last video putting more time into it. I feel like I have put a good amount of time into it, with the disclaimer that yes, I am still new to this franchise. But even doing that, while I have enjoyed many aspects of this enough to continue playing dozens of hours, a lot of the initial things I thought were not great about it are still not that great about it, and in some ways they do get worse the more time you go. So, you know, my thought was, I'm going to set this down till they make more changes. I did that for a couple of days, and then I started a monk. So, I don't know. I love Path of Exile so far. I think it's a really fun game. I just, you know, I think there are certainly aspects that can be improved, which is very obviously going to be the case in early access. But even what there is of the end game, it's certainly, I think, worth putting time into, which is, I think you get to a certain point where you're like, okay, this is really not ready for prime time yet. So I will keep playing my monk. I don't know if probably do a monk update at some point. Not that anyone cares about my monk strategies. My ranger is just pure like lightning arrow, voltaic mark. Like I know there's a more powerful like ice combo version, but like again, I don't really want to. I don't see the point in like refarming all of my gear to, you know, be slightly better against bosses or whatever. So I don't know. Let me know if you've kept with it, what you think. If you're one of the people who was yelling at me before, let me know if these thoughts are any more coherent for you. I welcome your feedback. Yeah, but thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.